Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about uh, tank mitigation and why it's important that you hit the resistance cap, as well as what other types of mitigation you can implement on your build, and what you should do and what you shouldn't do and all that. So let's get into it. Um, let's start off with the three skill lines that I use. I know I've gone over this a lot in my other videos, but Bone Tyrant, Earthen Heart, and Soldier of Apocrypha are my three of choice. I know there's a lot of information out there about using other skill lines for tanking. I have made a video called the Holy Trinity of Tanking. If you've not watched that, I go into detail as to why I choose these. I would recommend you go watch that video if you're interested in tanking. That's got a lot more detail on this stuff here. But let's get into the purpose of this video. When you take damage in the Elder Scrolls Online in Trials and Dungeons, there's basically different ways you can mitigate that. And one of the best ways is to make sure that you are at the resistance cap, which is your armor. There are two types of damage in this game, essentially: spell resistance and physical resistance. Two overall types, I should say. Physical damage is going to be, for example, like a melee weapon, like a two-handed boss or something like that, that's physically hitting you. Spell damage is typically like an area of effect, not always, but it's more fire damage, shock damage, stuff like that. If you want to know what damage types fall into this category, they basically follow the same as the blue tree here with the damage types. This over here will show you the physical damage types: the physical, poison, disease, and bleed. And then the elemental damages is magic, flame, frost, and shock. So those pretty much stay true to those damage types. Um, so if you're getting hit with a poison, it's going to be physical. And then if you're getting hit with fire, it's going to be this one. Now, I like to keep these the same, just so that I know when I hit one of them at cap, then I'm good on both of them. I'll go into a little bit briefly here on my armor setup and all that. But I will mention I am an Imperial, so I am not running the Nord race, which I know has been historically the recommended race for tanking. Because it is so easy to get to the resistance cap now with subclassing, I would recommend giving the Imperial a try. And the reason why is the Imperial has much better passives, I believe. It's got the skill cost reduction, which is huge. And the two max stats here are absolutely awesome for getting your attribute points into where you need to be. Additionally, I'm running the red Frothgar food, which is basically what it gives you is a huge line of max health and then magicka recovery. And they finally got that fixed, it looks like, where it's displaying accurately. Magicka recovery is absolutely huge on a tank. You want to build for mag recovery and have a big stamina bar for blocking. And so one of the best ways that you can mitigate damage, as I was saying, is to make sure that you are at the resistance cap. And so what I do is I get major and minor resolve, and then I proc this, which is going to give me even more armor. And then as you can see, I am at the resistance cap. I'm actually over it. Now, a lot of people might be going, well, you're over, you should change your build. Well, let's get into that a little bit real quickly. I am not using reinforced gear except for the chest piece I have. And that's just to make me tanky just walking around. But everything else is divines. And then my Mundus is the Atronach. So I have literally not built in for resistances at all, and I'm still hitting the resistance cap. Um, there is a lot of armor involved when you use the Soldier of Apocrypha skill line. The Runic Sunder will give you 2200 armor, and then the Aegis of the Unseen, while you are under the benefit of that Runic Sunder, will give you another 3,271 armor. So that is why I recommend trying out the Imperial over the Nord. It makes tanking so much easier to have all your stuff reduced. Just as a comparison, I know that Barrier and Warhorn usually cost 250, for example. On my Imperial, it only costs 235. So there's one benefit, that red diamond passive that reduces everything by 6%. It even includes ultimates. So something to think about. My Magma Shell only costs 188. So resistances is important on a tank, and the cap for resistance is 33,000. So as long as you are at the resistance cap when you are fully buffed up, then you should be in a good spot for resistance. And then the other thing you want to look at, and this is probably one of the most important things to make sure you're taken care of, is block mitigation. Very, very important to make sure that your block mitigation is up. And how you can check that is you go into your character screen, you go to your advanced stats, and you go over to here to this stat right here. This is the amount of damage that you can mitigate when you are blocking. So when you sit here and you hit block like this, that's the amount of damage that you're going to take off. So for example, if this is 82 and you've got a boss that's going to hit you for 100,000, then this is going to take 82% of that and absorb it, and you're only going to be inflicted by 18,000 damage instead of the 100. The other thing to look at is your block cost. Every time you block something, it's going to cost this much of your resource. And if you're running a sword and board, then that's going to be stamina. So that's why you want to have a big stamina bar. Now, when you do hold block, your stamina recovery goes to 0. So that's why I don't like to run food for stamina recovery, because it's going to just be at 0 anyway. So the main way you want to recover stamina is to heavy attack after a heavy. Another trick that I do now that Infused Crusher is not as optimal anymore, you could use it if you need to, but I like to put a stamina glyph on my back bar, and I'll show you why. I'll take down my stamina here and I'll just hold block, and you can see that stamina glyph is gradually giving me more stamina. I'm not doing anything else but holding block. And while that Wall of Elements is out, my stamina bar is refilling. So that's another way. Another common way is you can sit here and hit Igneous Shield, and that will give you stamina back as well. So that's just another sneaky little trick on getting stamina back on a tank. But let's get back into the mitigations. Transferred damage is another way you can reduce damage. For example, if I was running a common way of doing this would be from the Living Death passive, you could run the Spirit Mender that transfers 10% of the damage to your Mender instead of you. So that would be another way. And then shields, of course, are another way to mitigate damage. Now, something you have to think about when you're building a tank is when you start stacking into block mitigation, each time you take a chunk out of what you're going to be blocking, the every time you add on something becomes less potent. So let's say you're about to block something that's 10,000 damage, and then you add another item that reduces your block costs, or excuse me, increases your block mitigation or the amount of damage you can block. It's what they call multiplicative. So once you take the 80% out of that, 82% actually, and you're now left with 1800, now you're taking the percentage of the 1800, which is the leftover value. You're not reducing the percentage of the original hit. So that's something to think about. You might be in a situation where you're trying to add minor protection, for example, and it ends up only taking about, you know, let's see what 1800, what 5% of that is only 90. So you'd end up with taking a hit of 1710 instead of 1800, where you might be able to put in some other kind of mitigation or shield or some other buff on your build that could be more beneficial. So be careful about stacking too much into a category, because it could not be as beneficial. Let's just go up to my transmute station here and go over a couple of things. And so, if you're going to build tank gear, I recommend going with Divine's gear. It's going to be best to buff your Magicka recovery with a Atronach Mundus. Sturdy is a trait that you can reduce your block cost with, which, again, every time you reduce your block cost, which is here. Now let's say you take 870 and you put a piece of sturdy gear golded out on there. It's going to take 4% off of there, so then you're going to be left with 835. So then it's going to be, so 870 minus 835 means you took 35 stamina off of your block cost. So if you go to 835 and you times it by 0.04, that'll tell you what your next sturdy piece is going to be after that. So it goes from 35 cost down to 33 reduced off of that. So each piece of sturdy that you're going to add is going to be reducing not as much to your block cost anymore. So that's how that works in this game. When they say multiplicative, that's what it means. It's not taking 4% every time from this number. Every time you add one, it takes the resulting value and reduces it from that. So you eventually get to a point where you're not really gaining much, and you can get a lot more out of your build if you make sure you're building in a lot of different areas rather than stacking up into one thing really aggressively. Another thing that people can do is they can make jewelry for block cost. That's another way you can mitigate things. I would again just recommend using infused jewelry with the mag reduction glyphs. That's going to be your best help there. Another thing to help you stay alive with mitigation, try to use as many magicka skills as you can and save your stamina bar for blocking and for taunt. There's a lot of um, ways that you can drain your stamina if you're, for example, trying to run Stone Giant. That's really an advanced technique, and you really got to know what you're doing to run that skill. I wouldn't uh, I wouldn't try to use something like that if you're going to run out of stamina. That's going to be one of your biggest reasons you're going to die is you have no stamina to block with. So this is one of the most important things for mitigation is making sure you keep your stamina bar up and make sure you got a big one. Um, so shields is another one. Shields is a little bit different. Shields, you can stack as many shields as you want to, but with bar space and all that, you just got to be careful. Like, are you kind of burying the needle too much on one category, and maybe you're spending a lot of magicka on shields and you don't really need it. So you just got to pay attention to that kind of thing. Um, better ways of reducing your incoming damage, I believe, is applying things like Major Maim and Major Cowardice, and then also Minor Maim. So you can stack into those, and it doesn't really hurt as much. Uh, it won't affect your own stats. It's just going to reduce the incoming damage so that you can manage it a lot easier. Um, different damage types, physical direct damage that hits instantly. You can block that, but if you've got a damage over time dot on you, the only way you can block that is by shielding and healing out of it. Your block does not help on that regard. Resistances do help, but you're going to want to make sure you got a good heal on to be able to mitigate that. And proccing Ingenious Shield right before you hit your heal is going to be good too, because that's going to be the way to get your major mending up. You can sit there and go like this and get your major mending up so that your heal hits harder. Another thing about getting your shields up, the bigger your health bar is, the better your shields are. So make sure you use a really good food, and make sure you're stacking into your health really well to get your shields up as high as you can. That'll make your shields and your heals work really well, because those are both scaled off of max health, as it says right here in the tooltip. But that's going to be it for damage mitigation. Make sure that you don't stack too much into one category, and try to hit all areas of damage mitigation. Be it resistance cap, make sure that you've got a good shield on your build, and you are also having a decent amount of block mitigation. If you're a main tank, you really always want to have the bracing anchor slotted so that you are tanking the big nasty in the room, and if he hits you, you've got 20% block mitigation. I would also recommend Bastion to make your shields bigger. Um, those two are really good for main tanking. Maybe not so much as an off tank if you got to run around a lot, but I would recommend that. So thanks for watching this video. That's going to be it for this one. If you liked this video or found it interesting or helpful, please check out my channel. I have several playlists that I have created. If you go onto my channel and go down into the created playlist, you'll see all of my folders that I have all my content separated out on. Give it a look and see what you like. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.